I think something lives in the lake behind my house. Written by lilithmaynot.
Something happened to me last night, and I know I won't be able to explain it without sounding insane. But I have to tell someone. All my life I was told to stay away from the lake, which was really just a pond that sat just past my backyard. I don't know why I wasn't allowed to go near it, but now I finally do. And I wish I didn't. I'll start at the beginning. I'm visiting my parents and have been here for a few days, staying in my childhood bedroom. When exploring all my old stuff on my first night there, I found a diary hidden away under my mattress. It was an old one of mine from middle school that I had only used a few months. When I read it, I found that some of the entries were a bit, unusual. I wrote it off as the wild imaginations of a kid who was at the age where they tend to over-exaggerate things. An age where kids got into things they weren't supposed to. I'll write some of the stranger entries below. Mama warned me not to go by the lake again today. She said the water is especially dangerous around these times. I'm not sure what she means, but I think it's 'cause since it's so hot out right now, more kids are tempted to jump in it to cool off. Even though most kids don't like the lake and call it creepy 'cause it has swampy black water, they still sometimes try to get into it, but Mama always chases them off. At school, they tease me and call her a witch, but she don't act like that at home, only about the lake. I was dared by Tommy to go up to the edge of the lake today and look into it. I was scared he would push me in if I got close to it, but he promised to stay back, so I went right up to the edge and looked into that dark water. I swear something was staring back at me. I thought I saw two black eyes peeking out like one of those crocodiles you see on the Discovery Channel. It scared me so bad, I ran away even though Tommy was laughing at me when I did it. After that, I didn't go by the water no more. Tommy went missing, and I think it's my fault. He kept teasing me about being scared of the water, so I told him he was too chicken to do it either, and dared him to touch the water if he was so brave. He said he was gonna, and to meet him by the lake after school to watch. But when I went there after school, I didn't see him. I waited up for a while, but heard Mama calling for me and had to leave. Then he didn't show up at school the next day, or the one after that. When the cops showed up and told us that he never went home after school that day, I knew the water took him. The thing that lives in the water. Reading about Tommy sent chills up my spine. Not because it was a haunting memory, but because I had no recollection of him at all. I didn't even remember writing those passages. I stuffed the book back under the mattress and went to bed, making sure to sleep on my side facing away from the window that showed the lake in the distance, now surrounded by a tall chain link fence that I'm sure my mother had put up. That was my first night. The second night, I came home from hanging out with some old friends, a little tipsy from going to the bar with them. I laid on my bed for a few minutes before I heard the singing. It sounded like a woman singing. It drifted through my window, and I knew if I listened closely, it would be coming from the direction of the lake. I slowly lifted my head and looked out the window, but nothing was there, except for the still black water, sitting inside its cage. There was a small splash when I laid my head back down, but the singing didn't stop. I quickly put in my earbuds and willed myself to sleep. It must have worked because the next day I woke up to the sun shining in my window and birds chirping. So I, of course, wrote off the singing to my tipsy, half-asleep brain playing tricks on me. What else could it be after all? Night 3. I ended up in bed much the same as the night before. But this night, when the singing began, and I turned my head to look out the window, someone was standing there at the edge of the lake. I got up and walked to my window and saw that it was a naked woman with white skin and hair that seemed to be glowing under the night sky. She seemed to be looking right at me, and her eyes were black. I felt drawn to her, and without thinking, began to climb out of my bedroom window. I think it was lucky that I had some drinks in me that night because I was uncoordinated and caught my pant leg on the window pan, causing myself to fall back into my room and knock myself out of my daze. When I got up and looked back at where she had been, she was gone. Shaken, I went back to bed, making sure to put in my earbuds this time. The next night, last night, I want to forget. I realized this is the dumbest thing I could do, but at the time, I was convinced that I was losing my mind. I got drunk at the bar and found myself walking home. I made it to my front door and stopped. The singing had started again. I found myself walking into my backyard, almost against my will, towards the lake. The woman was standing there, just as she had last night, but this time, she was facing the water. And as I approached, she slowly stepped into it. I watched in horror as she continued into it until the top of her head disappeared below the water. I had never seen anyone touch that water, let alone go into it. I stumbled forward, feeling, for some reason, like I had to help her. I climbed the chain-linked fence and walked to the edge of the water, and I saw her eyes looking up at me. Black eyes, like a crocodile. And when it began to raise its head out of the water, I found myself wishing it was. It looked almost like a horse, but with its skin rotting and falling off in places, and dark seaweed in the place of hair. The smell of death washed over me and began to push myself backwards as it pulled back its lips, showing its teeth, not like a horse's, but like broken glass shoved into its gums. It was almost like it was smiling. The soulless eye stared at me for a second before it moved. Or at least I think it did. I didn't even see it, but I felt the pain flare in my legs as the thing sunk its teeth deep into my calf. I pushed my fingers into the dirt and grabbed at the grass, trying to pull myself away. My fingertips brushed the fence, but it pulled me back with a jerk. With one more effort, I looked back at the creature and kicked it with my free leg as hard as I could. I felt its skull cave in under my foot, and it screamed with the voice of a woman. I felt it let go of my leg and made a dash for the fence, pulling myself over it as fast as I could with only one usable leg. I fell to the other side and found it staring at me from the water. The place where I had kicked it, a gaping hole, showing the ruined insides of its head. It continued looking at me as it sank slowly back into the water. It felt like a promise that it wouldn't give up. I dragged myself to the house and fainted right outside the door. I woke up in my bed. I remember what had happened last night, but it seemed more like a dream in my half-awake state. It wasn't until I sat up and felt pain searing my leg that I was sure it was real. I pulled the blankets back and saw that it had been cleaned and bandaged. When I looked up from my leg, I saw my mother sitting in the corner of the room, looking at her hands.
I'm sorry.
Is all she said at first. And then she explained the rest to me. Her family had moved into the house when she was a child, without knowing about the creature. She found out when her brother was taken, and she watched it happen. I had never known that she had a brother once. She told me that she knew it wanted her next. She told her parents that she had seen her brother drown, knowing that they wouldn't believe her about the creature, and she stayed away from the water all her life by convincing her parents she was scared of water because of what happened to her brother, which wasn't exactly a lie. She slept with music on every night, and when she got older, she moved out. Then her parents died, and she inherited the house. She came back and found that kids had been disappearing more and more since she had moved away, and the police were at a loss. Nobody knew where they had went, but she did. So she decided to protect the town from the creature herself, and by doing so, she became the witch. When she had me, she made sure I always stayed away from the water. Made sure I knew that I was not allowed near it. Once I became an adult, she didn't worry about me visiting because it usually only takes kids. She thinks that it has always wanted me especially because it hates her. She stopped its flow of food and it wanted to take me as revenge. I am lucky to be alive, and my parents are moving out next month. They've decided it's finally time to move on, but they will leave a set of rules for the next homeowner about the lake. And hopefully they listen, or they will learn the hard way, like I did.